Hey guys, Matt Sayers here, and today I'm diving back into r/malicious compliance. I love this one for its stories. I did a whole month ages ago, like back in 2018, just for malicious compliance in my tier list of like all the different levels of like from malicious compliance to supernova revenge. I'll link that particular playlist in the description. Let's get into this one though, where I've got two medium stories and an extra long one. Let's start with a medium story. Google it. It took me 2 minutes. So I was working as a part-time for the startup firm. The firm is related to hydrogen production, and I had this task of finding suppliers who'd be willing to build us a prototype scale hydrogen separator from syngas. Now, the technology needed, I'll call it PHF, porous hollow fibers, and it is a very highly researched technology. In almost any string that you search, you're going to come across tons of research papers on the topic. I did, of course, use a variety of tricks for efficiency and filtering results, and so managed to find some resources. It did take me more than a day or two of filtering the sites to find some reliable sources. Now, besides me, there was this other senior PhD professor who was also helping with this task. He told to my boss, there is this site, go check it. And I was given the recording of that phone to follow it up. And for the love of God, I couldn't decipher the name of the firm that PhD guy was taking. I asked my boss very nicely, what I am overhearing is this John firm. But no matter type of string I search, I cannot find something relevant to what we need. My boss eventually caved in, talked to the professor again, and got the name of it, Texas time. Now, the site was Johnson Matthey, and if you are familiar with that site, it's mainly a catalyst manufacturing site, I believe. And besides that, it has tons of scholarly article reviews. I had already gone through that site, and I knew there was nothing but a paper about the tech we were looking for. So I told my boss that this is a research site, nothing but a paper about the tech we were looking for. So I told my boss that this is a research site and they don't sell products like that. At most, I can find tons of catalysts on it, and that is all. But my boss assures me that he's a PhD and he knows better and how I should just go look. I spent more than 2 hours on that site, looking up every single reference to hydrogen, separator and fibers, and eventually told my boss the same thing. That is not what the site is for. So, the next day when I come to the office, my boss starts sending me telegram messages. I'm screen notification reading it. Boss says link, and then Google is free. It took me 2 minutes. I read that from screen notifications, rolled my eyes, gave it 5 minutes, and then tabbed into the links to read through. Now, unfortunately, Boss edited out the message, it took me 2 minutes, but I knew Boss sent it earlier. So I go through my boss's links, and I kid you not, the first link was about cars, the second link was about catalysts, and the third link was about rooftop firm that uses a sort of membrane. And just like the amazing employee that I am, I took the next 3 hours of my time taking notes on everything that was on those sites, making a report, then telling my boss that, hey, so I spent some time on those websites you sent me. Website A was about XYZ, and Web B was about etc. Why do people do that? And after my report was over, I said I have very diligently viewed the sites that you forwarded me, but as I reported earlier, I could not find any relevance to what we are looking for. However, if you want me to further pursue it, I can write them an email to inquire too. The sources that I have found have already verified for possessing the tech that we are looking for. Sadly, while searching takes a click, filtering the results is the real work. Even though boss person still made me email Johnson Matthey, and I forwarded their confused reply back to my boss, it still felt good to see how boss's 2 minutes worked out. And boss's passive aggressiveness grew, lol. And I just had to quit before I sunk to the same level, lol. Gotta love it when Google has all the answers and not to argue with it. When the answers are completely wrong. Take notes of everything you say in the meeting? Okay, but it will get you fired. So this happened a few years ago. I will be vague since I'm not sure if the dust is fully settled from this fiasco yet. At my former company, I was the secretary for a small improvement team that would meet monthly to discuss issues within the company and brainstorm ways to fix them. Something you need to know about me is that I was given this role because people know I am meticulous at keeping records due to HR related issues I had at a previous place of employment. I don't think my boss realized that this careful record keeping applied to her as well, especially when she appointed me to be secretary of this little committee, but I digress. I was a model employee, read award winning, and went above and beyond what was asked, as were many others in my department, but we were still having customer complaints and dealt with regular safety issues due to the company at large and through no fault of our own. When we brought these concerns to our boss's attention, emails were left unread, and during in-person exchanges we were called whiny, needy, and were told that we needed to just deal with it. Whatever the issue, from items being stolen by customers to people being unhappy with the procedures the boss had set down for us to follow it was always made to somehow be our fault. When we sought support from other departments, we were met with cold indifference since the boss was great to them. We must be exaggerating the things she said to us. Well, during an improvement meeting at the end of the fiscal year, it all came to a head. Myself and a couple of my team members dug our heels in and were insistent about the unresolved issues the boss refused to acknowledge, and she finally went off on us. She told us everyone was incompetent, didn't deserve our jobs, and maybe customers would like us more if we were more likable. When people pressed her on safety issues, she continued to reiterate that we would just have to deal with it, and that if someone was going to die, they already would have, right? I, as the secretary, did my duty and took notes of all that happened over the course of that meeting. I usually did bullet points, but that night I was feeling a little more thorough, so I wrote down words. Every word that was said. Every hateful comment, denial of accountability, and idle threat was recorded in black and white. Now, a second part of my job was to distribute the notes from the improvement meeting to the rest of the company. So come the next morning, I ran about 100 copies of the transcript of the meeting and hand-delivered them to every single department in the building, and things blew up. People from other departments who had attended the meeting were able to verify that everything I had typed up had really been said, and folks were mad, ready to quit, refusing to do their normal duties, browsing Indeed during work, etc, etc, etc. Why did people use etc? My boss's boss, who worked at HQ, so I didn't get the opportunity to hand her a copy, got wind of the meeting minutes only a few hours after I handed them out, and had an hour-long off-the-record conversation with me about all the safety issues I had documented, all the concerns I had submitted to management in writing, and all the records I had regarding my boss's inaction. She was very grateful for the 100 pages of documentation I sent over, and thanked me for my time. The day after I unleashed Pandora's box, I put in my 2 weeks notice, took a new job, and peaced out to greener pastures. At first, it seemed like things were calming down after I left, but the following year, the company did not renew my boss's contract. Bye-bye! I still feel a bit bad because I wasn't trying to get her fired or ruin her life. I was just desperate for some accountability thrown her way to create some positive change in the company. But at the end of the day, I just did what she asked me to do. Just cleaned up the office. The only time I've ever heard of someone getting in trouble for doing more than required. This turned out to be much longer than I thought it would, especially for a first timer, but I hope you find it worth it. Many years ago, I worked at a company that manufactured medical and scientific testing machines, think shakers, small centrifuges, etc. I originally started there as a machinist until I hurt my knee at work. 8 years and 5 surgeries later, and it still got fixed. After my injury, I switched over to the assembly line because that was more accommodating for my new limitations. Long story short, I was very good at my job. coming up with new ways to streamline several processes, new ways to assemble various things quicker than before, generally doing more work than my job description called for, and even having the temerity to prove the engineers wrong on multiple occasions. With everything I could do, I knew it would require the company to hire at least 3 people to replace me should I leave. It was announced one day that the assembly manager, AM, was leaving that job, whether for another position within the company or the company altogether, I don't recall, and anyone who was interested could apply for it, with a promise that inside personnel would have the inside track over outside applicants. I put together my resume and went for it. The son-in-law of the company's owner was doing the interviews, which I aced. He went so far as to tell me that my resume was by far the most professional and complete he'd ever seen. But I didn't get the job. No hard feelings, I just went back to doing what I had been doing. Well, as it turned out, they hired a friend of the owner's son-in-law as the new AM. So much for that inside track, huh? It seemed to me, as well as my co-workers, that we weren't even at the same race course, but whatever, I could deal with it. I don't know what that guy's previous work experience was, but it became abundantly clear very early on that he was out of his depth. He had no clue why and how things were done the way they were, but he decided a couple of weeks after his hiring that he was going to change everything about the assembly area. Oh no. One of the things he decided was that we were no longer allowed to exceed the number of machines assembled per day, nor were we permitted to skip over machines to get to others, regardless of the issue. Engineering issues, bad parts, wrong parts from the warehouse, etc, etc. Why do we do that? Some of these parts came from the machine shop side, but many from outside companies too. But we also weren't allowed to stand around waiting for new parts from the warehouse. We could even get with the warehouse personnel to help find the parts we needed or help them get the parts into our assembly area. No doing more became our mantra. Productivity and quality plummeted. Needless to say, none of the assembly team was happy in the slightest. I tried, I really did. But I have issues with not doing things to the best of my ability. I also have issues with not being able to fill my workday with work. You know, what I'm being paid for. I would be the absolute worst person to ask about quiet quitting. A few months into the new AM's tenure, my station was at a standstill due to an engineering problem with a new variant of a machine that I could practically build blindfolded. I had 4 to 5 college-educated engineers crowding my station attempting to figure out a problem that arose only after the machine was fully assembled, which I explained exactly how it could be fixed, with minimal effort by the way, and I was correct, but that's a different story. While waiting for the engineers to come to the same conclusion as me, they did, eventually. I went to the warehouseman responsible for pulling the parts I needed to assemble and asked him to switch over to a different machine I was going to build. The AM happened to wander over just then and asked what I was doing. I explained the situation with the engineers and that I was currently unable to work on those machines, and rather than standing there looking lazy, I was trying to get a jump start on the other machines I needed to build that day. At no point did I get sarcastic, which is my normal mode of communication, or me, nor was I flippant in any way whatsoever. I was merely trying to get some work done that we both knew needed to get done. He started loudly berating me in front of the whole entire shop, both the assembly area and the machine shop, specifically saying, "You're not allowed to do more than I tell you to do in the order I tell you to do it." I placated him as best as I could and went back to my work area, which was still overrun with engineers, and settled down for a long wait. Cue the malicious compliance, because I didn't work on another machine for the rest of the day, not because I didn't want to, because I was told I wasn't allowed. A couple of hours later, I was called into the AM's office for a meeting. I was expecting another stern talking to, which I could handle, being ex-military. I'd grown accustomed to being chewed out by people who didn't know how to do the job I was doing. What I was not accustomed to was getting a write-up for trying to do my job, especially since the official reason was subordination. The AM didn't even have the courage to do it himself. He foisted it off on my immediate supervisor, who wasn't involved in the prior situation and had no idea what had happened earlier. I think I was busy putting out a different fire. When he asked what happened, that justified my first and only write-up in the 2.5 years I worked for the company. When I explained it to my supervisor, all he could do was shake his head in disbelief. He was a good supervisor, at least when it came to getting the best out of most people, but he also wasn't really known for rocking the boat to stick up for his people. That said, when he tried to get me to sign it, I refused because I obviously disagreed. He said he understood, but he'd have to talk to AM about it. That did not go well. I could hear the yelling half a building away, despite the machinery running. Once again, I was called to AM's office, but this time I was facing the AM. He immediately started yelling at me again, but not just about the earlier incident. Now he wanted to know why I hadn't built the day's allotment of machines. I coolly reminded him that not only was there an engineering problem with the machines I was supposed to build, he told me not to work on any other machines, and to do so was insubordination, as he so callously put in the write-up. Then he asked me if I was going to sign the write-up. Once again, I refused. I don't think it's right or fair to be reprimanded for doing my job. If you don't like it, he said through clenched teeth, find another job. I can find 1,000 people who can do that job. I never said otherwise, jackbutt. I was fed up now and refused to tamp down my anger any longer, but you need at least 3 people to do everything I can do as easily and as well as I can. Good luck with that. I left him sitting there, completely flustered, went back to my work area to gather my personal effects, walked over to my supervisor. I informed him that I was going home and would like to use my accrued PTO and vacation time for the next 2 weeks. He told me it was no problem and he was approving my request. I let him know that I was also given my 2-week notice and wouldn't be back. He shook my hand and wished me well in my future endeavour. I did the same and left. I got to leave on my terms and through my son, who also worked there, as well as various friends I'd made while working there. I did learn that the company had to hire no less than 5 people to replace me and my expertise. I also got the last laugh, because I'm pretty sure AM got fired a couple of years later for various reasons, not least of which was the lagging productivity, and is driving a mass exodus of the best personnel in the assembly area. Oh, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You lost your best person for the job, and then you lost everyone else, and had to hire on the B team, basically. It's just so embarrassing for you, mate. And on that note, I'm going to end this episode here. Links will be in the description to the main channel and the second channel for you guys to go check out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so the next video comes out. A ding, a ding. I'm the Mad Scientist. Mad Scientist out.